Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Save Time and Money Using Aerial Maps to Quote, Bid, and Win, brought to you by Landscape Management and our sponsor, Nearmap. Nearmap captures U.S. imagery multiple times a year, processes massive amounts of visual data, and uploads up-to-date aerial maps to the cloud within days. With their patented technology, Nearmap delivers high-resolution aerial imagery as a service to a variety of industries. And today, we'll be talking about how it affects you in the landscape industry. I'm Bethany Chambers, Director of Audience Engagement for Landscape Management, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Before we get started, I'm going to let you know a little bit about our today's webinar. First of all, it's going to be recorded and you are in a listen-only mode. However, there are multiple ways that you can participate, and I'm going to go over those next. So, if you have questions, you'll notice a Q&A panel in the lower left-hand corner of your console. If you have a question, you'll just have to type it into that panel's text box and then click Submit to place your question in queue. We encourage you to ask and enter any questions that you have throughout the presentation. However, we will address those questions toward the end in a Q&A portion. If you experience any technical difficulties today, you may use the same Q&A panel on your screen to submit your issue, and assistant producer Allison Barwatz or I will personally assist you. Finally, Landscape Management's Twitter feed is placed on the right-hand side of your screen, so you can @mention us to submit questions during today's webinar. Just pull up the Twitter feed right there on the screen, and you can send us tweets that way, or you can do it through your own Twitter account on your phone or on your computer. You may learn more about our speakers by viewing their photos, bios, and more information to contact them in the panel located in the upper left-hand corner of your console. This also has their Twitter and LinkedIn handles for Nearmap and Oblique Grounds Lawn Care, so you can check them out online. And if you are logged into your social media accounts, you can use the Share This widgets that are on the left-hand side to actually share this webinar with your friends and colleagues today. So in the 7 years that I've worked for Landscape Management, we've seen demand for new technologies like aerial imaging increase as it has become more affordable for businesses of all sizes to incorporate it into their processes. Today's speakers have been working in the industry for much longer than I have, so I'm excited to introduce the two of them here today. So first of all, I've had the pleasure of working with Mike St. Louis, Director of Customer Engagement at Nearmap, on 2 other webinars, so I know you're going to get a lot out of the presentation he has for you today. Mike is Director of Customer Engagement and Marketing Automation at Nearmap. Prior to arriving at Nearmap, he spent a decade leading or being part of global marketing and demand generation teams for several top 50 organizations. He holds a bachelor's degree in journalism and advertising from Central Michigan University, along with a handful of industry certifications. You'll also be hearing from Cameron Ashby. I'm excited to say that Cameron is a landscape management reader. He's also a systems manager for Elite Grounds Lawn Care based in Pleasant Grove, Utah, just outside Salt Lake City. He's been working in the landscape industry for more than 15 years and has been creating different processes and systems for Elite Grounds for the last 8. In those 8 years, he has personally transitioned 3 companies into measuring sites online and has helped several others switch to online measuring and HD aerial imagery to use for that measuring. So first of all, here today, I'm going to pass it over to Mike. Mike, go ahead and get us started.
Thank you, Bethany, and thank you for all who could join us today, and for all those that will catch up with the recording. As Bethany mentioned, my name is Mike St. Louis, and I am the Director of Customer Engagement and Marketing Automation here at Nearmap. And joining me today, excuse me, as Bethany had alluded to, is Cameron Ashby from Elite Grounds. Together, we will be discussing and highlighting how using HD aerial imagery can help your business grow. That's a little pun on landscape talk. First, let me explain who Nearmap is and how we help the landscape industry. So as you can tell by the slide here, we capture and manage and specialize in high-resolution aerial imagery offered as a cloud-based service, which can then be accessed by our proprietary viewer, one of our solutions known as Map Browser. If Map Browser is not the needed tool for your systems, we can also be called in, our imagery can be called in as a base map layer in other design platforms. We are going on our 5th year of capturing here in the United States, and our U.S. headquarters is located just outside Salt Lake City. Our global headquarters are based in Sydney, Australia, and we've been capturing in Australia for over a decade and are also publicly traded on the Australian Stock Exchange. So with that, here in the U.S., we have been in the sky since 2014, and what makes Nearmap different is that our imagery is easily and immediately accessible via the cloud and on any device. Unlike other aerial imagery providers that fly solely based on the commissioned request of their client, Nearmap has a preset coverage program, and we regularly capture and update annually, which contains about 72% of the U.S. population which means that customers that are using our imagery usually don't have to request a specific area to be flown. It's already contained within our solution and at a larger scale within our capture schedule. Our proprietary camera system allows us to offer 3 different product lines of sorts, which are vertical, a straight down view, which most of us are used to, panorama, which provides a very ultra clear bird's eye view of locations from each of the cardinal directions at about a 45-degree angle, with uninterrupted pan and zoom capabilities. Then we have an oblique, which is similar to the panorama, but allows for precise measurements for features like roof pitch, area, structure, height and width, as well as trees from foundation of a house to the top of a house to the top of the roof, anything that we want to measure any height or width with. And of course, all in 3 dimension as well. Also, we are pioneering the way that 3D location data is being provided with textured mesh DSM and point cloud data, which provides unparalleled access to massive scale reality captures and high resolution 3D reconstructions, which form a digital ready, and form that integrate readily with leading analysis and design platforms. As you can tell, our imagery can be and is used across various industries: landscaping, roofing, solar, our ACE industry, which is architecture, construction, and engineering, as well as government and many more. But one of the most consistent and highly used industries that we see is for landscaping and design. We have over 8,500 customers that are logging in and using Nearmap on our aerial imagery on a regular basis. We have a simple ideal as a cornerstone in what we do. It states, if we change the way people view the world, we transform the way they work. Cameron will showcase this idea in just a few minutes. So the 5 C's here at Nearmap is one way that we deliver on that cornerstone message. Nearmap captures, manages, and delivers current, consistent location content faster than anyone. Since we fly certain areas multiple times per year, our data is updated more frequently. We capture at a sub 3-inch GSD, which is a ground sampling distance. Actually, it's 2.7 to 2.8 to be exact, which makes the capture about 4 times more sharper than satellite imagery. And again, since we fly areas multiple times, we have historical data that is easily accessible and allows for change detection and analysis. As mentioned before, it is a cloud-based service, so all of our HD aerial maps are instantly accessible through the cloud. And finally, as we fly, we make sure to fly the same specs across all the locations. So you can see the exact same positioning from capture to capture. Nothing, the slight changes here and there, but once you overlay, if you were to overlay an image on top of another one, the actual zoom in, zoom out capabilities would be exactly the same. We also adjust our schedules to fly and capture both leaf on and leaf off seasons. So a user can see imagery with tree canopy and without for objects hiding under the canopy. And so you can see the whole perspective of your desired area. So how do we do all this and serve it up for consumption? As you can see here, just a side note here, this image that's in the background of this slide, this is in our map browser viewer. And what this is actually a side-by-side comparison of the same location. It's at the end of a cul-de-sac there. And you can see the date at the bottom, hopefully, might be a little bit blurry, but you can see that the dates at the bottom one was more frequent, the other one was a previous capture. So you can see the leaf on, leaf off. You see a little bit of the green, more of the summertime green on the right-hand side, as well as the comparison to a little bit brown, more of the leaf off, so you can see the entire property. So as an aerial imagery company, we actually use fixed-wing manned aircraft with our patented hyper camera systems. This allows us to collect large areas in a timely fashion. The camera systems capture all imagery again at a sub 3-inch ground sampling distance. Being cloud-based makes the imagery easily accessible and allows the user the freedom to view without the need for any additional software or hardware, and removes the burden of resources to manage those said items. Our captures are processed within days and then are assembled to create the digital elevation models, or the DEMs, as well as orthorectified images, and altogether create an uninterrupted mosaic of the captured area, like you saw in the previous slide. Once the area of interest is captured and processed, users have instant access through our cloud service, again, which is the map browser viewer, or it can be API called directly into a design platform. Our vertical captures, which is the most popular product of for our landscaping friends, can be seen here on the map. The larger metro areas in the orangish color was captured 3 times last year, and the smaller areas were flown and captured 1 to 2 times in 2018. We have a few new 2019 surveys, which our surveys is pretty much where we're going to fly. That's what we call a survey. So 2019, a few more new areas of some of the southern states, and are now flying the northern states to begin to capture Oblique off. I know this map is a bit of a squinter, so if you'd like to see if your area is covered, please visit nearmap.com/coverage. Simply enter in an address and it will list any captures we have for that area. Regardless of the capture amount, the consistent quality of all flights flown are within the same specs. Now, we're not oblivious to the fact that there are other capture methods available and each have their purpose. Satellite offers large-scale coverage that isn't typically clear enough to provide the details that you need to accurately prepare, design, and or install as you so desire. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the drone. Drones obviously can be current and clear, but the drawback is to get a larger area of coverage is very difficult to scale and takes a lot of management and skilled expertise to operate. Drone also requires multiple hardware and software to access the captures. So with Nearmap aerial imagery, we offer more frequent and high clarity, all easily accessible again via the cloud in our in-browser viewer, map browser. So here's a quick comparison between the two, one of our biggest questions we get is, how are you different than Google, or I use Google? Well, here's a pretty good example. This was, I believe, in Arizona. And so there was a field just outside Phoenix that you can see on the left-hand side of Google still shows a field. Google Street Map algorithm has the streets in there. However, they don't show the actual neighborhood being built. And actually, there's more than one neighborhood being built, as you can see on the right-hand side, which ours was taken this month, at the beginning of this month. So you can see the neighborhood coming in very nicely there. So the capture date from the satellite image, we weren't able to source because Google just provides what they provide. But as you can see in the Nearmap capture, it was just the beginning of this month. If you're using satellite services, you would be missing out on how many of those structures are now in place and how many could be prospects for you. So here's another example, but this one comes into clarity and accuracy. So we know that frequency matters, and especially for our landscaping friends. So as you can see here, 2 images of the same property, with the left-hand side being again a Google. You can even see the pin, the map pin on it. That it's a Google pin of the location. The color is a little bit off. Google does have a tendency to color enhance some of their imagery as well, and they're also focusing on kind of the 3D gamification of their imagery, so you kind of lose the aspect of what the property actually looks like. So this would be able to show you if there were any additional measurements or maintenance were required. You can see which one would lend itself for a better outcome for what you need. All right, with all this in mind, Nearmap offers more than just the imagery that we've shown to overlay and design upon, but the various capture options that we offer do offer a full end-to-end support for your business. Using the imagery to prospect and see where those neighborhoods are being built, and being able to measure a property in minutes from your desk without having to get in your vehicle and deal with traffic and deal with other site issues, it just leads to very smart and easy lead generation. And as Cameron will discuss, using the image data for design and measuring also helps provide the complete package when it's time for quoting and providing proposals to your clients or prospects. Now back to the clarity and accuracy mentioned, you can maintain not only your properties, but perhaps those that were cared for by others, dare I say the homeowners themselves. But by seeing the ground truth ahead of time and verifying that maintenance may be needed is easily done from your desk with all the information that you need. Now here's the case study, which will be a great transition into what Cameron's going to be discussing about. And so what Elite Grounds was doing before was they were using satellite imagery, which was outdated and blurry, and the accuracy to measure and assess the property was a hindrance because of that. So they looked to Nearmap to update their imagery, and which allowed for speed and accuracy in the bid and the proposal process, reducing job estimating by 75%, accurate measurements, and led to accurate measurements in quotes. So with the leaf-off imagery, as stated before, that also helped in being able to see different things and help with additional service offerings, such as being able to install holiday lighting. But please take a minute and have a read of Cameron's quote there, and then we'll be able to hear from Cameron himself. All right. I think this, like I said, this case study is a great overview, or this case study overview is a great transition. And I'll stop boring you all now, and you can hear from Cameron himself on how Elite's Grounds is winning with HD aerial imagery. Cameron?
Thanks, Mike. So, like he said, my name is Cameron Ashby, and I work for Elite Grounds just south of Salt Lake City. I have been in the landscape industry for many years as a whole, but I've been working for Elite Grounds almost since they actually started. They were founded back in 2003, and we are a full landscape maintenance provider. So we provide all the chemical applications, and we take care of any insect treatments, lawn care, mowing, trimming, tree work, many different services. We try to be a one-stop solution for all of our properties. We take care of large commercial properties and cities as well. And our company as a whole has been featured about 8 times in a few different types of national magazines. But what really started me down this whole road with Nearmaps was because I was kind of getting sick and tired, like Mike kind of was talking about, how Google Maps just wasn't updating enough, because everybody knows Google does overall the best when it comes to navigation work, in my own opinion. So back in 2015, I was looking for a better solution than driving out to all of our different job sites and hand measuring all of them. There's a couple places nearby our office where me and one other person drove out and spent an entire day measuring the whole property. But after I came across some satellite imagery at the time, I found out that it was much easier and faster to do it all online. So, and I've used different map softwares as well, or satellite softwares as well. I've used Google and I've used Bing because they do different flyovers throughout the year, trying to find the best one for the coverage and possibly with leaf off. Never really was the case, but that's what I always strive to find. So originally what started me down, like I was starting with doing, what I was trying to find with Nearmaps was more consistent flyovers and image quality and leaf off. Because it was just annoying to drive out to a job site and just sit there trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to measure this and waste an entire day? I was trying to increase my productivity. So I was on my email, saw Nearmaps, ended up calling them up and asked them to give for a demo because that's what I needed. 5 minutes into the demo, they showed me the leaf off. It was a sell for me because I was able to measuring places faster. I didn't have to drive out to any job sites, didn't have to deal with traffic, and just really was trying to increase my productivity to my fullest ability. And Nearmap honestly provided that solution. So it was a no-brainer. It sold me on their system. So how is it, though, that with aerial imagery and having accurate numbers can save you money? Well, there's a handful of different ways, kind of like Mike already mentioned before. Since we're getting closer to the holiday season, if you were wanting to bring out roofs to get your pricing and order in your product for your holiday lighting for new properties, nothing really, outside of going to the job site, nothing really gave a solution to knowing how much length there was. I mean, we could sit there and draw a line on a map, but Nearmap has that oblique view, which gave us the ability to go and see what the pitch is, so we can get the rise over run and actually get a true measurement, so we can make a decision in the moment on how much product we needed to take to that job site, so we can measure or we can install what we need. Because of how accurate we were able to become with our turf and everything as well, we've been able to make sure when we order our chemicals in for our fertilizing programs and whatnot, we were able to make sure that we ordered exactly what we needed instead of taking an educated guess and hoping we bought enough, and not knowing if we bought too much and having products sit on your site. Nobody wants to have money just sitting, or buying too little and then having to do another order and being behind schedule, because time is money. Another way that we've been able to increase our productivity is, like I was mentioning before, going out to a job site. About 4, 5, 6 plus years ago, we were sending 2 to 4 people out to go and measure any of our job sites. And it came to a quick realization how much money we were wasting, especially once I discovered how to start doing online measuring. So as an example, though, for you, if a property has 130,500 square feet of turf, and I'm taking that number on what I've measured on one of our own properties, and you send out a two-man crew, to go and measure it, you have no idea, because you're going to have all the different angles. You're going to have to deal with, we all think we can go out and measure a square. That's easy, but as soon as you have to get circles in, you have to get triangles, you got to start pulling out your geometry that you learned back in junior high and high school. All of a sudden, you're spending more time out in the field measuring and making sure you get your total measurements correct than you are of actually going out and measuring and bidding on the project. And another example as well, sorry, my notes actually got mixed up and now I've misplaced where I was going with that. I apologize. Well, I'll just continue on since I don't know where that slide just went. So, like Mike was talking about before, Nearmap has this functionality of going back in history, which was huge. Like I said, like we've mentioned a few times, the lack of leaves now being off of the trees. For us in the landscape maintenance industry, finding a picture where a tree canopy isn't blocking the view of the turf or the roof or even beds is one of the best things when measuring online, which you won't get that kind of option if you're doing it with Google Maps, Bing Maps, or Apple Maps. It's even more helpful when it comes to going out to a new job site to have this feature, because now you know what to expect. You can go back in history and you can see how the sprinkler coverage has been on that job site. Have they been having dry spots in the middle of summer? Or are the tree canopies thinning because of possible disease or insect problems? You kind of can get a feel of how the property is going to be going into, or as you're bidding it ahead of time, and you can make sure you're bidding appropriately. It's helped us make sure that we know, okay, in the middle of summer, these properties over here that we're bidding on have problems with their watering. So we can either go in and increase their watering schedule ahead of it, or we can go and check their coverage, like we've done many of times, and adjust the nozzles or add extra heads to make sure that we don't have the same problem that the previous landscape company had. Because one of the things we've learned over the years is if a customer is putting you out to bid, it's either because they are required to because of rules by their board members or state laws, or it's because they're unhappy and they're trying to find a better solution. So if you can use these maps to your advantage to see these kinds of things, you will give them a reason not to go back out to bid, and you can keep a property for a much longer period of time. The other great thing about online measuring is as you're going in and putting these proposals together, so like for us at Elite Grounds, what we do is we will measure out turf areas, planter beds, rock areas, and native areas. The reason why is because we have different chemical that we can apply in rock areas that will kill everything except for certain types of plants. For native areas, so that way we don't kill out native grasses or wildflowers. So taking those types of measurements, you go and put them into your bidding software, you can actually get a more accurate bid out to your potential clients. And because you can do it all online, you can get it done and out faster. One of the things I've noticed is before, now that I remember my note from the previous slide, is before we would send 2 to 4 guys out to go measure a site, and they would be out the entire day and maybe get 1 or 2 sites done. Now, one person can be in the office and do all of that same measurement, all of the same measuring that those 2 to 4 people were doing by themselves. So if you do some quick math, let's say you hire a college student to come out, $10 an hour, and you hire 5 of them to go out and do your proposal or to do your measurements, that's $50 an hour plus overhead. You're just throwing money out the window at that point, is how I looked at it originally. Because now you can have one person in the office who is $12 an hour who can do a measurement, put a proposal together, and send it out to that potential client on the same day, which in turn should help you get more clients as long as your bidding is done in the respective manner that they are looking for. So how do these measurements help in bidding? So this first slide is for turf areas. One of the things after talking to other landscape companies, I've learned that they don't really know how to bid some of their properties. Homeowners that's doing a homeowner's house is pretty straightforward. You're going to use the same type of mower for every yard, and it's pretty simple. But you also need to understand that there are things you need to know your production rates as well, because you want to know how much a crew is going to produce per hour. Because then you know how many jobs you can dispatch to them in a single day, how much they can get done in a week. You can see how much money they're going to bring in just from that one crew, if you know ahead of time how much they can truly do. So going back to an example I was starting to say, and when I forgot which slide I was on, if a property has 130,500 square feet of turf, and you send a 2-man crew, go out and mow, trim, edge, and blow, and let's say that crew can cover 9,000 square feet per hour per person. They should be able to do that job in about 7 hours and 15 minutes. And knowing that, you know that if they come back to the office and they clock out for the day and they have 9 hours, either you know that they were just getting the time because you're paying them hourly, or maybe you didn't bid it appropriately. There's one property of ours where we took the client's measurements as what it was and found out 2 months in that they were actually missing 3 acres of turf, plus a building that all of a sudden went missing because they tore it down and turned all of that into turf. So there's all of a sudden more areas that we were needing to mow, and we had no idea about it. So one of the things when it comes to that too is if you're doing aerial imagery or satellite imagery, you may not know that that building got torn down. If I go and look at Google and I look at that property, that building's still standing, at least as of 2 weeks ago. But if I get on the Nearmap, I can see exactly when they tore down that building, when they sodded it, and when we should have been including that extra turf in our bids. Because we took the client's numbers as actuals, we bid off of that. And like I said before, quickly learned that it was not accurate, which is now costing us more money. But we stick with it because our company believes even if we mess up on our measurement, we will still take care of the customer because that's what they were hired, or that's why we were hired. We were hired to take care of their needs. So even though it was our fault for not double checking, we still are holding ourselves accountable or holding ourselves to the current contract. Another reason to know your total turf area square footage is because if you're doing commercial properties or cities, you would like to know how much of it is open area, how much of it is narrow. And knowing that bit of information, you can then figure out, okay, I need to have a 21-inch mower, a 36-inch mower, and 2 60-inch riding mowers to make sure we can do all of these jobs that we have for the city in a single day, which is one of the ways we approach it. We don't have just 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. We try to make sure that each crew has the necessary equipment on their truck so that way they can go and do the job and do it correct the first time. Last thing we want to do as a company is send our guys back to a job site. We all know how much that can eat at your profit. So if you make sure that you send all the equipment that they need with them ahead of time, then you will not have to worry about having them coming back unless there's a very specific type of reason, like equipment goes down or something of that nature. But one thing to also know is what is the productivity rate or the production rate of each of those types of equipment. If you are in the same industry like I am, and you focus on commercial properties, you want to make sure that you know how much your guys are supposed to do. Mainly because you want to make sure you give them enough. Nobody wants to get yelled at by a supervisor because they're always over budget or over time. You want to make sure that you bid it appropriately so that your guys can do it and feel good about what they're doing. And you as a supervisor or an owner as well. Sometimes that does mean that you might not get some of your bids because they'll go with the lowest bid possible. But that also shouldn't matter as much because you want to make sure that you are making money on your projects. Maybe that project wasn't going to fit your company, as an example. So how do these measurements help when it comes to your planter beds? Well, you want to be able to know how long it should take somebody to pull weeds or go around and spot treat, or in the springtime, as most people do, put out a pre-emergent. You want to know how long they should take. You want to know how much chemical they should be taking with them. So that way they can just, again, go and do the job and get it done the first time. It's also helpful to know how much ground cover there is so you can make sure you send the correct chemical. You want to know how many shrubs there are if you're going to be pruning a property. You want to know areas where you may be planting perennials and annuals as well. So that way when you are going and buying your flowers for that project, you aren't over-ordering what you need. Again, nobody likes product just sitting because it's just wasted money. It's just sitting doing nothing. So as an example of that too, if a property has, and again, this is one of our property numbers, property has 6,000 square feet, or 16,000 square feet of planter beds, and you send a one-man crew to hand pull all the weeds, and that one person can cover 8,000 square feet per hour, he should be able to be on this job site and done and move to the next job in about 2 hours. Now, there's always give and take, in my opinion, because you have the human factor, but it's a good guideline to know so that way you'd be like, oh, well, this person can get this place done in 2 hours, the next project in 3 hours. That's 5 hours of his day. Okay, I can have him go do a couple other places and do the same thing as well. And you can plan out your days better. Because one of the things I've also learned is you are able to plan out your day with your crews or for your crews ahead of time and set the expectation. They will do what they can to meet that expectation. So again, knowing that you can see how many jobs a crew can do in a single day, as well as in a week, it will also help you know when you might want to hire another employee if the workload is getting too much for that crew. Sometimes you want to hire because of needing that feeling of hiring because you feel overwhelmed. Well, you want to make sure that you know when is the appropriate time to hire that new employee. Just because you hire somebody new but you don't give them enough work, they may not stay with you. You want to make sure that you have enough work for them to work full-time or part-time, depending on what their want is or what your want is with them. And you want to be able to give them what you can. So having these types of measurements will help you understand how to budget it, how to bid on them, and make sure that you get the most amount of money that you can get without being tossed out of a bid. Because nobody likes to have that happen. And nobody likes to have their clients go shopping for a new property. So if you can show them and be real with them, they will build trust with you, and it goes a long way, is what we've learned in our company. So kind of to reiterate a few things that I was saying earlier, how do you save time and money? Like that I gave earlier of people going out and measuring a job site, because at least in Utah, we are entering into the season, part of the season where people will be putting their projects back out to bid. So any of the new properties that we've never measured before, we want to make sure that we measure it accurately, because we want to make sure we get the right dollar amount, like the right bid to them, and we want to make sure that we get the profits that we're looking for and make sure we give our employees the time that they need to accomplish the work that we're asking of them. So when it comes to the chemical side of things as well, one thing that, because I am also a chemical applicator in our company, I've learned that knowing what the perimeter footage is, which you can get off of Nearmaps, which is great, and you can also see how much turf, beds, and rocks. You can go to your vendors and talk to them about how much is it going to cost to buy X amount of fertilizer for your next round. One of the things that I've got on a phone call. I'm sorry about that. And because of that, I lost track. But anyways, here with elite rounds or at elite rounds, one of the things we do, or we try to do, is know how much chemical we need in a day, in a week, or even a month from now. We like to plan ahead. So that way we can shop around, get the best deal that we possibly can for the jobs that we are doing. So that basically is everything that I had. So I will turn the time back over to Bethany at this point.
All right, thank you very much, Cameron. I really appreciate that. And that was fascinating to me because I think one of the main questions we get is whether this will work for who in the landscape industry is using Nearmap. Is it people on the maintenance side, lawn care chemical, landscaping, shrubbery, nursery, or design build? And it sounds like from what you're talking about, it can be used in any of those cases.
Yep, exactly.
Great. So now we do have quite a few questions from the audience. We'll take a few here in the next 10 minutes or so before we give people a couple of minutes back at the end of the hour. So our first question here today is from Mark, and he says, we see how Nearmap imagery compares to big consumer tools like Google Maps, but how does your imagery compare to other products being marketed to landscape companies? And I'm paraphrasing a little here, Mark, but Mike, I'll give that question to you.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, good question. One that we get a lot of as well. And so what it is Google, I'll use Google first. Google is the giant that Google is. I mean, it's part of our almost everyday dictionary now. Just Google it, or I'm going to look on Google, that kind of thing. And so we know Google necessarily will never be a competitor of ours. Hope one day that Nearmap is large enough to call it a competitor. But we know it's also easily accessible. And so we get a lot of, well, I use Google. And so we just say, well, this is how Google's different. Same thing with the other tools that are out there, great tools to use, but they're just that, they're tools. And so what Nearmap is we actually focus more on the aerial imagery. We are providing the imagery. We just happen to have the tools, a layer of tools on top of that imagery as well to help out the landscapers, the solar installers, the roofers, architecture and engineering as well. And so with us being the aerial imagery, that's essential to us making these tools more effective as possible. So the higher resolution the imagery, the better, more accurate those measurements are actually going to be. So again, we focus on the imagery that makes those tools even better. The imagery that the other tools provide varies in resolution. And also we frequently update. So our imagery is consistently updated 1 to 3 times per year, and it's consistent at that high res level. Which allows for the measurements to be within inches of accuracy, where the other ones are just tools relying upon a service to bring in that imagery, where we're providing the imagery and then have the tools on top of it as well. Some of those tools that are out there, they have approached us and they're currently using another solution. They ask the same question: how are you different than the solution that I'm offering? So it's kind of the same question, but in a different light. They're providing the tools, but they want to know what is the best imagery for their tools, and we've had ongoing conversations with them as well. So that's essentially it. We're the imagery provider that has tools. The other tools that are out there are tool specific, and they'll just use the image, whatever imagery they can get to put their tool on top of.
Great, thanks for that, Mike. And Mark, if you're currently using another tool that's out there, I'll make sure to connect you after this with Mike so that he can give you a little more detail on that by email. So the next question is actually one that came in at registration. It's for you, Cameron. It's from Beth. She asks, what other platforms do you use with Nearmap to accurately bid for landscape maintenance and hardscaping projects?
So the software that we use, it's not an actual software, it's an Excel sheet that we used for some of our bidding, but we also use Service Autopilot currently for our routing software and budgeting and things like that. So does that answer the question, or did I miss part of it?
No, I think that answers the question. I'm guessing she's looking for a specific name of software that maybe she's looking for some recommendations. And Beth, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth here.
No. So yeah, I've looked into actually a bunch of different softwares. Kind of what it's come down to is when it comes to the measuring side, kind of like I was saying before, I'm much better on the Q&A portion, I'm not going to lie. So for the online measuring, like I mentioned earlier, I've used Bing Maps, I've used Google Maps, and a couple other ones. And when I came across Nearmaps, it was the one that actually sold me the most because it is a all-in-one package solution in many ways. And they actually listen to customer feedback. I mean, some of the feedback I've given them, surprisingly enough, has actually directly translated into some of their recent updates, which blows my mind that they actually listened to a little landscape company on some feature requests. And I don't know if other people have requested them or not, but I know I've talked to some of the people on the developing team, and they've told me, like, your feedback has directly influenced how we approach this, which I thought was amazing, because I never in a million years would have ever thought about it. But for the other part of the software, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's a great point to the customer service needs that a lot of landscape companies need, especially if you're a small team trying to do this work. You know, you're trying to wear many different hats at one time and do this work at the same time.
Yeah. So again, the fact that they listen is great. But for the other side of the question too, like I mentioned, we use Service Autopilot as our program. They are able to do bids out of them if you kind of know what your production rates are or what your rate matrix is, as they put it in their system, will be. You can put them together and you can actually pump out bids very quickly, especially like homeowners, where you're not having to worry about the different type of equipment that you're taking to your sites. There's a little bit more process if you're doing commercial or cities, but overall, you can that's the software we use for a lot of it, and they really do a good job on providing an overall solution for us.
Great. And Mike, kind of a follow-up question that made me think of at the same time is, can we use Nearmap with other design products that are out there?
Yeah, this is another one we hear often as well, because again, to kind of go back to the fact that our main focus is the imagery. We just so happen to have a development team that created some pretty sweet tools to use with our imagery. But yeah, we absolutely can be used within a lot of the design platforms. So some of the larger ones are Esri, ArcGIS, Autodesk, those type of applications. But we have an open API, which means as long as you have access to Nearmap subscription, you can call in whatever image, whatever property, whatever address imagery you want into whatever your design tool is. And if there's a specific one out there that you're looking to see if it can connect to, I would just recommend hopping on our website, nearmap.com. And in the top right, there's a bright pink button that says Try Nearmap. Just fill out that quick form and we'll connect you with somebody that can actually walk you through, show you your area of interest, produce that image for you. We can email it to you, and then also be able to answer those, what other applications we work with kind of questions.
Great. And actually, there's a direct link to Nearmap's website in the box on the right-hand side of your screen, or you can actually just click that Nearmap logo at the top, and it'll take you right to Nearmap's website if you're watching this right now. Another question that came in from Paul, but he said he had to scoot, so I'm going to pass this on to you, Cameron, to take after the fact. He's looking for some examples of the cases where you have used Nearmap to help bid successfully, and I'm sure you have quite a few of those, so I'll connect you with Paul afterward to answer his question. Another question from Donna. How long has your software been in use by landscaping companies, and can you provide references to prospects? So I guess that's for you, Mike.
Well, I think the second part of that question is Cameron. He is probably our our best reference that we could possibly have. We've used Cameron for a couple of marketing initiatives as well because of the impact that Nearmap has made with Elite Grounds. But our software, again, has been utilized. And we are the Nearmap is the stakeholder in Australia for the last decade plus. And then here in the U.S., we've been flying the skies for about the last 5 years. So our imagery and tools have always been as kind of a package deal, if you will. So it's not a suite of products. We do have various products between the vertical, the oblique, the 3D, those kind of things, but they all come with the tool set. So it's not like, oh, I only get imagery, but I've got to upgrade to get the tools. It's all encompassing. So when you actually become a Nearmap customer, as Cameron did, he saw the power in the tools as well as the imagery to be able to get those quick measurements for the area of a front lawn or a back lawn, or to draw just simple lines and radiuses to show sprinkler head and sprinkler head trajectory and shading of trees. And so that's how long we've been doing it, for about 5 years here in the United States, again, another decade plus in Australia. We're also in New Zealand. And for our friends to the north, we are in our second phase of capturing Canada. And so we will actually be launching a complete suite, the exact same suite up in Canada as well. So we'll be capturing the cold north.
Well, that's great to hear, because we actually do have someone from Canada joining us today. And so that's a good point you brought up. I'm actually just pulled up the registrant list and our number of attendees here, and it looks like we're covering pretty much all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and Canada as far as people who are joining us today or will be joining us in the on-demand version after the fact. So how can they find out if Nearmap covers their area?
Yeah, great question. One we get a lot as well too. So the way that we fly again, other competitors or other aerial imagery companies, they fly at the commission request of a specific client or a client to be. So an organization will come to them and say, I want, from this boundary to this boundary, or these square kilometers or these square miles, where we're actually proactively flying. So we look at a little bit of the larger population in the United States. So we actually base our flight on population and then kind of request and need. So we do have some more rural areas. I think like the middle of the country, Kansas, Iowa, those kind of things. We'll capture the larger cities and the urban sprawl out of those cities and the suburbs on a 1 to 3 times a year basis, depending on the size of that city. And so if you go to nearmap.com and then just /coverage, or if you're just on nearmap.com, in the top menu, I believe the last navigation link is coverage. You just simply type in your address and it will show you if we have any captures, and if we do, it will show you the historical list of those captures as well, or at least the most frequent captures. And so again, we kind of fly the area that we know we're going to be able to repurpose that imagery for multiple needs, not only just landscaping, but solar, roofing, insurance even. One of our one-off flights were after Hurricane Michael, I believe it was, that hit the panhandle of Florida, the devastation of the shoreline there. We were able to actually capture that. We put it into a 3D fly-through for insurance purposes, for public safety. So a little bit different uses in industry. But yeah, we mainly stick to the larger populated areas and then kind of go out from there as need progresses.
So that's going to be welcome news we have quite a few people from Southern California joining us, so I'm sure that'll be welcome news to them, because in the Los Angeles area, it sounds like you probably do a lot of coverage there.
We do, yep. So Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and then heading back inland towards the inland part of the state, we actually cover, of course, most of our imagery that we put on our trade show booth and that we use in presentations. They're usually of the Pacific coast. So it's some beautiful land there just to show. That's the other thing about our imagery as well, as what Cameron alluded to, is that the marketing aspect of our imagery. So you can show a property before your business, your team touched it, and then after. So you kind of have that, that weight loss before and after kind of picture where you can see, look, the difference that we made. But not only that, but also just to see what happens throughout the world in the areas that we capture. There are just some magnificent landscapes, untouched or manicured. They're just some beautiful things that you can see from the sky. And so that's just, most of the marketing team on a Friday afternoon, we catch ourselves just surfing around our map browser tool, looking for cool imagery to add to the website or add to a marketing collateral piece. So it's just always really neat to kind of have that readily accessible when you need it.
So we're actually going to go to go ahead.
Sorry, I was actually going to point this out because of what you were mentioning too. I actually love this picture in the background because it actually is a perfect example of one of the things I mentioned. Because you can just look at it a little bit closer and you'll start seeing all of these dry spots. I mean, they're not sand banks on the golf course or anything. These are actually dry spots you can see from the pictures that you guys took. You won't be able to see that from any of the other satellite imagery. So it's actually a perfect example of how you can use this. And you can even use an image like this for marketing. Be like, do you want to have dry spots in the middle of summer, or would you like to have a solution?
Yeah, that's a great point, Cameron. So I was just going to jump in and say we're getting a lot of great audience questions here. So we're actually going to go to the top of the hour. I'm going to bring a couple more questions up from the audience for you guys. For anybody that does have to drop off the line, we know you have a busy day and a busy schedule. I have pulled up on the screen now Mike and Cameron's email addresses. These are also clickable links on the left-hand side of your panel. So go ahead and get those email addresses if you have questions that you'll need to follow up with them later on. But in the meantime, we're going to go back to the audience questions. So we had the one that just came in, and it was just on the topic that we were discussing about location. And this person says, a lot of our area is rural, so how would Nearmap help with our rural clients?
Yeah, so the best way is to figure out if we do cover is probably to connect with us because of, again, our surveys, which essentially is another name for our flight patterns. They do change. So even though we have a scheduled flight pattern based at the beginning of the year, we will take a look once we get into the year and see if there is any additional change or if something has happened in a specific region or territory that would be more beneficial to the rest of our audience. And we might kind of shift around our schedule and adjust our flight patterns to encompass that as well. So that's one way, but yeah, to definitely connect with us. Again, just fill out that pink button, tap that pink button, fill out the form on our website. I think it's pink, it might be fuchsia, not sure. But that button will lead you to the form that we can fill out and connect. And the easiest thing is to be able for you to say, I want to see 123 Oak Street in, such and such Pennsylvania, whatever it may be. We can pull it up right there while talking to you and share it with you. We'll do a screen share and be able to show you if it is covered or not. We have a partnership with another satellite company called here.com. And so they're essentially kind of our satellite version of the Google Maps kind of thing. And so it's not as clear. I have been told at trade show that it is clearer than Google. I can't make that statement, but someone did mention that to me. But it doesn't allow for the tools are still available and everything else, but we just don't have the accuracy that you would have with an actual captured image. But yeah, again, just let us know what address that is. We'll pull it up right there on the screen, share it with you. Then we can look at to see where maybe the largest city, if we don't cover it, where the largest city would be or the most recent captured area would be. And then kind of guesstimate when we could potentially be capturing that area again. And then we put in a request with our survey ops team, our flight team, and say, hey, we've got a couple requests for this area. And if it's a small enough, square mile, square kilometer kind of region, we may just kind of quickly circle that with the plane. But again, that all depends on need and request. We do have a program. We don't mention it very often because it's actually relatively expensive. So to get the planes up, get the camera systems up and running, we do have a dedicated flight request system. I'm not sure it's probably one that the landscaping industry would use a lot of, but if it is something that you think you're going to need to see captures time over time, we can talk further about that and see if that could potentially be added to as a solution as well.
Great, thanks, Mike. Now, one last question I'm going to pose to both of our panelists here. This one comes from Amy. So she asks, when using this information for a bid, are you allowed to share these pictures and images with the customer, showing them the area that was measured? So, Mike, if you could answer that question first, and then Cameron, if you could tell us whether you actually do have requests for that from your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my question will probably either echo or kind of dovetail perfectly into Cameron's is yes. Simply stated, yes. So what we get a lot of when we hear from customers is that they're pulling up, as Cameron had mentioned, he had a building on a piece of land that was no longer there. So we actually hear that a lot. I get on Google real quick because it's quickly accessible. Google, type in the address, and I can kind of see it real quick. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing is that people are utilizing that image as the truth, the ground truth, and it's not anymore. And so what clients are using our imagery for is not only for the measurements, but to show change over time. Again, the leaf off, leaf on kind of concept as well. But yeah, absolutely. When you're utilizing the tools inside Map Browser, we have and Cameron was part of our testing for this, is we have a new section of our Mat browser called Projects. And so what Projects does is it allows for a layered kind of activity. So it tracks the different types of things you're doing on top of the imagery. And so if you're looking, for example, at a property and you want to measure, I'm just going to use a residential property, you want to measure the front yard minus the garden beds, you can actually get that square area or feet or whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be a square. It can be a straight line for a sprinkler run or a radius for tree shading, whatever the case may be. And it will give you the measurement right there. So as soon as you close that box, you can change the color of that box. So if you want to show your customer, this is what we're going to tackle on Monday and Tuesday. You can make that a blue, a green, a red, whatever that may be. And then if you're going to hit the backyard or the side yard on another day, you can make that another color, just so they have a visual representation. Okay, I need to be here, or I need to give you access to my backyard on Wednesday and Thursday, that kind of stuff. And so all that is available in the Mat browser tool, and you can export it as a JPEG, which will actually just like any other image that you've ever grabbed, even from your phone, whatever the case may be, it just comes into your computer and you can put it into a Microsoft Word document or a bid proposal document or anything you want to see with those markings on it, which we find is also very helpful for crew. So if you're sending a crew to a site that maybe, 1, 2, 3, or all of them haven't been to the site, they can see easy access, they can see where they need to start. You can label it. There's an annotation tool. So, start here, trim to 5 feet tall, whatever the case may be. All that is created right there on the imagery and is for export and for you to share as much as you want to.
So for us, we've actually done many of the examples that you just mentioned, Mike, for our own clients. Most of the time, for me, what I'll end up doing is I'll measure a property, and sometimes the RFP isn't clear, or the client wasn't fully clear on what was their boundary line. So quite often what I'll do is I'll go do, not an outline, but I'll actually go and take my whole measurements. I will take away any of the numbers on there, because that's one of the features you can do, which I love. I love that feature. You can take away the total measurements showing and export it and email it to them and say, is this the boundary lines that you are asking for? And most of the time it tends to be that way, but sometimes it doesn't, it's not. So we will go back and say, okay, could you mark out where the boundary line is, so that way we can give you the most accurate bid? Because we don't want to put it too far over into somebody else's property, but at the same time we don't want to do too little, because we want to make sure we give them an accurate number. We want to give them the best bid that we possibly can from the very beginning. As soon as you have to go back and forth too many times, the customer's going to lose interest and say, you know what, I'm going to go with a different solution. It's happened a few times. I mean, it's a human error portion. So sometimes that happens, but if you can eliminate it as much as you can, then great, more power to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Mike. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. This was a fantastic Q&A session. You had excellent questions. As I said, I'll pass some of these on to our speakers to follow up with you directly after the fact. So today's event, Save Time and Money Using Aerial Maps to Quote, Bid, and Win, brought to you by Landscape Management, and our event sponsor, Nearmap, will be available for you tomorrow to watch on demand. For everyone who registered and is attending, this will be sent to you by email. And for any of your friends or colleagues who haven't signed up yet, they can continue to sign up at landscapemanagement.net/webinars. Thanks again for attending, and we hope you'll join us again in the future for another great landscape management webinar.